Alright, so this is an explainer video on the rear brakes for a 1977 MGB Roadster. The rear brakes on the MGB are drum brakes. You can see here's the drum here. In this case, it was a very old car, been sitting in a barn for over 20 years, and you see the slave cylinders. The rubber had completely deteriorated away, and you can see back here it's wet. There was brake fluid that had been leaking out. Another good way to tell if there's brake fluid leaking out is if the inside of your brake drums are wet. You can see if they're wet like this. Now, another thing that can happen to cause your brake drums to get wet is if the inner seal on the axle fails and fluid from the axle gets thrown out onto the axle. And in this case, that axle seal is okay. So that's something that you should consider. Look for wetness around here on the hub to see if there's any leakage coming from that axle. So moving along, again, this was a 20-year-old vehicle sitting in a barn, and the adjuster right here is a cog used to spread these brakes apart to adjust how the brakes are adjusted. Anyway, in this case, this was completely frozen up and it was rusted all out in there. And here's one from the other side. You can see I've taken these apart. You can see they move freely now. They move freely, and I've got some grease in there between them. It's aluminum and ferrous metal, so they don't really get locked up completely. But in this case, the winding here had become frozen, and the two parts here were frozen together. So I took it all apart, put some grease in there, and now they're free moving, and this will make it so the brakes can adjust easily. Okay, the next thing that's really complicated about this is the spring layout. And you can see they have one top spring. You have a spring right here for the emergency brakes, and then back here you can see the lower spring. The lower spring on this was the thing that was really the most complicated because it has this little doohickey. This little extra little hook on the spring comes down through this little slot, and it hooks under this little latch here, which when you have it in, when you have this in the brakes, it's actually this little piece here. This is the lever that activates the emergency brake, and this goes in behind the brakes. This is the driver's side here. This what you're looking at right here is a completely assembled passenger side. When you're looking at these springs, in this case, we got the spring kit from British Northwest Parts. Really great job. By the way, when I got these, they sent me candy for Halloween. So thank you very much, British Northwest. When the springs come, you'll notice that there's a matching set. In this case, it will go like this, because this is the driver's side. It'll be on the other side of the car like that. This little spring goes in the slot from the back side, and it goes underneath, and it latches underneath this. In this case, it would latch like this underneath, so that it pulls this up into the slot. The other thing to consider on here is where does this go, left or right? Do I put the triangle or do I put the square? And the place where the brake goes in is where the triangle goes. So when you're looking at the brakes, in the case of this side, in this case you can see they have the triangle on this side and the square on this side, and there's a slot and there's no slot, right? And that's because there's a hole where the emergency brake comes through right here, and so this will come through like this, and then the spring comes down and latches on it. But in this case, it would be the passenger side, so it goes through like that. Don't really need to kill yourself on getting these springs connected. A lot of people will have special tools or spring expanders and whatnot, but you really don't have to kill yourself on that. All you really need to do is take off these anti-rattle springs. These are really easy to deal with. This goes in from the back of the brake here. It comes in through the hole, and then you have a spring that goes over the top of it. And you can see there's like a little squished flange that goes through, and you turn it a quarter turn and it comes off. So it's really easy to take these off. You just grab them with the pliers. Grab them with the pliers like this. You push them in and you turn it a quarter turn, and then you end up turning this like that and it comes right off. So once these are free, and instead of using like special tools and whatnot to get these springs all working out, all you really need to do is on the bottom spring is you'll hook it up like this. Oh, come on, you. Well, you get the point. It'll be hooked up in there, and then when you get ready to put it together, you just go ahead and you hook the springs up, and then you have these things like this. You grab onto the bottom with it off, and you just grab the caliper in this case, and then you're on, right? And once you get the emergency brake on, this emergency brake spring, it pretty much holds on by itself. But then when you want to get the top spring on, all you do is disconnect it from the adjuster, put the back spring on like this, and then you just pull it apart yourself. You can see, like right from here, it's not that hard to pull it right off, just by hand. So if you preload the springs with everything behind there, you don't need any special tools at all to manage those springs. That's pretty much how that goes. If you have any questions, just leave them in the notes and I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you very much.